Right then, wel, croeso I chi ac croeso i'r cyfarfod yma ar democratiaeth yn Sbaen a'r cwestiwn cenedlaethol. Welcome to you all to this meeting as part of Plaid Cymru's annual conference. And it is the first time that we've had this sort of virtual conference and of course this sort of virtual meeting. I'm delighted to welcome you all. My name is Hywel Williams. For those of you who don't know, I'm the Member of Parliament for Arfon, and as it happens also I am the chair of the Westminster All-Party Group on Catalonia. Now that is an all-party, non-political, as it were, party political group, but here of course we're at home, as it were, and we're meeting as Plaid Cymru and Plaid Cymru's friends. So as I said, the title of this meeting is Spain, Democracy and the National Question. I hope you've all seen this wonderful advert produced. We have two speakers tonight, and I'm delighted that they're able to join us. Both of them are European members of the European Parliament. We have until 6:15, I understand, for this meeting, so we'd better crack on. Our second speaker will be Jordi Solé, who's from Esquerra Republicana, our sister party in Catalonia, of course, but he's going to be a bit late because he's involved in something else. So our first speaker is Pernando Barrena from Euskal, Herria, Bildu, from Gwlad y Basg, from the Basque country. What we'll do is we'll have a contribution from both our speakers, and then if you could indicate your questions, if you have any points, by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, but at the bottom of the screen there is a Q&A button. If you press it, you can write down your questions, which will then appear for me to read out. That is the most effective way of doing it. I hope that's all fairly straightforward. As I said, we have two speakers. I just thought I'd spend a couple of minutes for those of you who aren't completely familiar with the situation on the Iberian Peninsula, just to go through some of my impressions of what's happening in Catalonia and also what's happening in the Basque country. But I'll be very, very brief indeed. You will know, of course, that Catalonia itself has a long history of standing for its own rights, for its freedom, for its national freedom, including periods of independence, most particularly, I think, in the early 18th century. And of course, I'm sure most people will know what happened in the 1930s when the light of freedom and democracy was snuffed out by the fascist dictatorship of Franco, a period during which the president of Catalonia was actually assassinated, or he was murdered by Franco, having been handed over from his refuge in France by the Gestapo. There is a long history of this sort of thing, unfortunately. I've been involved for quite a while now, having visited Catalonia since the late 80s, but most recently over for the referendum, which I'm sure many people will remember, a referendum which clearly showed the opinion of the Catalan people, but which was marred by the disgraceful attacks on people who were queuing patiently and peacefully to vote. I was actually there for that referendum. I have to say I was and I remained shocked by what I saw the state authorities in Spain doing to this expression of democracy and freedom. Subsequently, of course, there has been a campaign of persecution, I think, and prosecution of the leaders of Catalonia, including the fact that many of the leaders have been in prison, very cruelly so, I think, and also have had to seek refuge in other countries. Most recently, in the last few days, you will have known that the current, or the now ex-president of Catalonia, Torra, has been prosecuted and barred from office for the simple crime of hanging a banner insisting on free speech and the rights of people to express themselves. That, I'm afraid, is quite typical of what's been happening for a very, very long time. It is an ongoing situation. It's a situation which is very complicated, particularly for foreigners. But there have been changes of governments in in Madrid. There have been all kinds of negotiations, and now there is a supposedly socialist government in Madrid. But as far as I can see, there isn't a huge change in policy. As for Gwlad y Basg, as for the Basque country, again, we all know in Plaid, of course, of the Basque country's proud history of independence and of standing up for the rights. There has been, of course, a long struggle there, unfortunately leading to great privation and deaths and a large number of imprisonments of Basque activists, many of whom are still in prison, and that is a substantial issue, as I'm sure we will hear. What has happened in the last few years, is that the armed struggle has come to an end, that the parties are dedicated to a peaceful resolution. But as far as I can see, from where we stand at least, irrespective of what's happened in the Basque country itself, the response from Madrid has been one of studied indifference. They are refusing to talk. And as politicians, we know that these matters eventually have to be resolved by discussion, by talk. So after that very brief introduction, I'm now delighted to go over to Pernando Barrena, who will give us an introduction of how things are in the Basque country. I'm delighted to invite you and to welcome you to our conference. Pernando, over to you now.
Okay, thanks, Hewell. Good evening, everybody, and thanks to Plaid Cymru comrades for this invitation to the Fringe meeting on Basque and Catalan politics and the current state of play in the Spanish state. As you will say, my name is Pernando Barrena. I am a member of the European Parliament in the European Left Group, GUE-NGL, and I also belong to the European Free Alliance Party on a personal basis. I come from the Basque country, and I am a member of the National Executive of Euskal Herria Bildu. And this party, Bildu, was born as the political coalition of the Basque Social Democrats in Euskal Kartasuna, members of FIFA Party and Plaid Cymru's sister party in the Basque country. Sortu, the brand of the nationalist left, and two other groups. On the one hand, Aralar, a split of the nationalist left, and finally, Alternative, a left-wing group that comes from the Spanish left political culture. Euskal Herria Bildu wants to overcome the period of electoral agreements and become a political movement of its own, so nobody will need to be a member of any political party in the coalition to be a member of Bildu. And nowadays we can say that Bildu is one of the positive outcomes of the Basque peace process and the end of armed struggle in the Basque country. Bildu enjoys a powerful institutional position with 1,300 councillors and 130 mayors, 28 MPs, both in the Basque and the Navarrese parliaments in the Basque country. And for the very first time, Bildu has its own parliamentary group in the Spanish Congress in Madrid with 5 MPs, and finally, 2 senators also in Madrid and 1 member of the European Parliament. It's important to highlight that we are the only Basque nationalist party represented in Madrid, with members of the 4 constituencies, and the highest ranked Basque political party as municipal representation is regarded. So, Plaid Cymru colleagues told me to make some remarks about the current politics in the Spanish state. And may I begin stating that, as you surely know, the Spanish political culture is highly reluctant to consider the mere existence of any national reality beyond the Spanish one in the whole Iberian Peninsula, as they have always considered that there is just a political subject, the Spanish one. So when Spaniards make their point about multiculturalism or concepts like plurinational states and so on, they also consider these issues as regards to places far away or not, at least in the Spanish area of influence. Miguel de Unamuno, one of the best Spanish writers and philosophers of the 20th century, used to say that the most similar thing to a right-wing Spaniard is a left-wing Spaniard. And by this funny quote, Unamuno meant that the Spaniards think of or feel quite similar when it comes to the Spanish territorial issues, on despite of the left or right ideological dispute axis. Even during the Second Spanish Republic, winds did not strongly blow in favor of the Catalans, the Basques, or the Galicians' national claims. Manuel Azaña, that was the last president of the Spanish Republic, said that he preferred Franco before those that want to break up Spain. It was us, Basques and Catalans again. And another one of his famous quotes recommends to bomb the city of Barcelona every 50 years to keep Catalans down. I hope that Jordi Solé will tell you more about this. So even the left was and is incredibly Spanish nationalist. And then Franco won the war. And after 40 years of Francoist dictatorship, no substantial change was made when it comes to the state powers. The same judges appointed by Franco himself kept on their duties and elaborated the rules that are currently applied for the nomination of new judges or different state bodies. The judiciary, national police, or state ambassadors lists are always plenty of the same family names that biologically have reproduced themselves in the Spanish central power habitat that rules the country from the shadows. And all of this, I would say, labels the Spanish state as a low-cost democracy ruled by people whose family and biological origins lie in the old Francoist regime. Even the judges of the Spanish High Court are dominated by colleagues and the two main political parties. And this is the same circumstance we are denouncing right now in Hungary and Poland, a politically intervened judiciary. And the answer that Europe cannot deliver when these countries are under the threat of the triggering of Article 7 of the Union Treaty. Their system is quite similar to the Spanish one. And they say, recently I have read an interview in Politico where a Polish politician said, why criticize it when it comes to Poland or Hungary and not in the Spanish case? That's what they say, and they are right. They are right because the judiciary is politically biased in Spain as it is in Poland or Hungary, and none of them is up to European democratic standards. You surely know that the latest news about the former king of Spain, money laundering, influence trafficking, corruption, and the new king is the son of the elder one, you know. So popular discredit against monarchy is higher than ever. It's huge in the Spanish state, and the right wing has reacted by counter-attacking the ruling Spanish government by the Labor, the Socialist Party, and Podemos. And the reaction is being huge, and even the Spanish judiciary and the monarchy themselves have blatantly joined this right-wing counter campaign, and this is quite significant, according to my opinion. It's in the context of all of this, on the one hand, political culture, and on the other, the Spanish ultra-right vision of politics that can only be understood from these points, when taking on account these points of view, that what the Spanish stance consistent when it comes to their approach towards the Basque or the Catalan issues. No political approach, no dialogue, no democratic recipes. Just send over police force and violence, special courts, prison, and any cut of any kind of respect of human or political right. And as I told you before, I'm sure that Jordi will surely talk about Catalonia. I like to make some remarks on the Basque issue. The current state of play in the Basque country comes highly conditioned by the end of 60 years of armed struggle. It's remarkable that ETA decided to bring to an end armed struggle as a result of an inner debate. No decision was taken on an agreement or quid pro quo basis. This is important to understand the whole thing. So the management of the post-ceasefire period has basically undergone on an, I would say, unilateral basis, along the participation of political or social actors, national and even international, as it regards to the commissioning or the disband of ETA itself. But I would say that the lack of involvement by the Spanish authorities in this whole process has created a situation that when ETA is disbanded a long time ago, the figure of political prisoners is still 226 now, and they are applied the same anti-terrorist prison scheme or policy of the 80s. A scattering of prisoners in more than 60 different prisons in all the Spanish and French states, isolation in prison cells, no paroles, and so on. Our understanding of the situation brings us to believe that there are two specific reasons for the Spanish state to behave this way. The first one is pre-politic and has a lot to see with the Spanish political culture I tried to describe to you before. No dialogue, abuse of force and law enforcement, no recognition of other subjects, and basically in this case of prisoners, retaliation. And secondly, Spaniards, I would say, Spaniards use prison policy at this moment currently as a retention tool against Basque independentism. They know that 226 people in jail represent too much emotional weight for the Basques. They know that unless the prisoners' issue is resolved, it would be highly difficult for the Basques to join the Catalans in a common national rights claim before Madrid. And they want to avoid such a scenario because that would surely be unbearable for Spain in political terms. And finally, as a member of the European Parliament, I'd like to make some remarks on the possible influence of the European political frame as regards to the issue of the legitimate will of the European stateless nations. In other words, whether Europe can be useful to our country's struggle for freedom. Political Europe cannot be understood without its values. And the central one is the European frame for human rights. If European political integration wants to have any choice in the future, some will have to understand that the right to exist and decide as a people is also a human right. And that idea, I would say, perfectly fits in the upcoming conference on the future of Europe announced by both the European Commission and the European Parliament. It perfectly fits in the grounds of the founding principles of the Union, very much to be taken into account when anti-globalist and pro-ancient Hobbesian state forces look for a place on the driving seat of the European integration debate. We, the small nations of Europe, have a lot to offer. Those that spread xenophobia, contribute to the far right and Euroscepticism spread, or simply want Europe to just become a USA Trump friendly trade platform, have to know that the European political integration journey will meet strong allies if it looks to the side of the self-determination right for the European nations. I believe that our stance is solid in that debate. It's based on the exercise of founding principles of the Union, and our own challenge should be to make them not able to look away in this whole debate. This is a central purpose for us to be in the European Parliament. So you Welsh people will always be able to count on us. Thanks so much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that introduction to the situation. Can I remind you that you can ask questions. I can't see any questions at present. So if you want to ask questions or make points, can you type those in on the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen? To proceed further, can I just ask a couple of things? Can I ask you firstly, are there cases from the Basque country before the European before the European courts on the human rights question? And if there are, I know there are some from Catalonia, of course, but if there are, what is the state of play? How far have they progressed? And what are the prospects for resolution, hopefully in your favour?
Well, in the last times, I would say for the last 5 years, some cases regarding the situation of the political prisoners in the Basque country. The double accountancy that the Spanish authorities make as regards to the years of sentence that they have to serve and so on. Have been denounced by the European Court of Human Rights, and even in one case, the most successful one 5-6 years ago, the European Court of Human Rights decided that the Spanish made law to make the Basque prisoners serve life sentences, more than 40 years and so on. That kind of procedure wasn't up to European human rights standards. So that has to be void, and it brought the immediate release or around 50-something long-term serving prisoners. So it's quite clear for us that at the moment that indicates that the vision that the Spanish state is maintaining is keeping around the situation of the Basque prisoners is not a European one. They are saying that, for example, there's no life sentence or life punishments in the Spanish states, but we have to remember that according to the last changes of the penal law in the Spanish state in the last 5-10 years, a prisoner can serve more than 40 years terms in jail, which is out. I would say it's out of any kind of human understanding of penitentiary procedures, and that it's I would say not up to European human rights standard.
Thank you. And the prospect of 40 years in jail is truly extraordinarily frightening and disgraceful, I think. We have a number of questions coming in now. And as Welsh people and as people from outside the Basque country, this one is interesting. Can you explain who some of the South African, British and other participants were in the peace process? And we know of Jonathan Powell, for example.
Yes.
What was their role in decommissioning? And implicit in that is what can people outside Spain do to help?
Well, the international role in the Basque peace process has been very relevant. You have mentioned Jonathan Powell, and some other international personalities took part in the process in crucial issues like as regards to crucial issues like the decommissioning of weaponry by ETA, the disbanding of ETA itself as an armed group. People that was involved in different peace processes, all around the world. The Irish one, the South African one came over to the Basque country several times to make their contribution and to help overcoming all the obstacles that were on the road, mainly coming from the Spanish authorities. It's important to highlight, as I said before, that for the last 10 years or more than 10 years, this peace process has always been a unilateral process. I mean, when I say unilateral, I mean that nearly all the initiatives and all the positive proposals that have brought the Basque country to a peaceful situation have come from the side of the Basque political groups, or the Basque nationalists, or the Basque community itself. The Spanish involvement in that process has been null, and that has not been the biggest obstacle for a time when the main key points in the agenda were the commissioning and some others, but bilateralism comes to be crucial when an important issue like the issue of the prisoners is the main one, and the main one in the agenda, and the main one that has to be resolved. Because at the end, on despite of the huge support for the release of the prisoners that it exists, clearly exists in the Basque society as regards to civil agents and political parties and so on, it's the Spanish government that holds the keys of the cells, are the one that has to take decisions to make that possible. That has not been possible at the moment, but I'm confident that, full confident, and that in the near future, this positive pressure done by the Basque community as a whole, from its institutions, political parties, and civil society, will bring this resolution, the resolution of the prisoners' issue, to reality.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'm delighted to see that Jordi has now joined us as well. Welcome to our proceedings here. There is one further question I'd like to ask you, Pernando, and it leads on to what Jordi, I'm sure, will be saying. A number of people have asked about cooperation between the Basque and the Catalan parties, to what extent that exists, and how useful it is, and how will it be proceeding, and what are your hopes, and any problems. Anything you'd like to say about that fairly briefly, and then we'll go over to Jordi. So over to you, Pernando.
Well, cooperation and the good relationship between Catalans and Basque is historical from several years ago, and starting from the Spanish Civil War, when the Basque and the Catalan presidents passed the French border together into exile. So I think it's a constant thing in time and in our histories. A part of it has been shared by both countries. And at this moment, when things are much more advanced in Catalonia as regards to the pre-independence process, support for that process here in the Basque Country, I would say it's huge, because on despite of the clear differences that we as different communities have, it's quite clear we share a common obstacle for our freedom, that is the lack of democracy in the Spanish state, and basically that the Spanish state law doesn't entitle the Basque and the Catalan people's countries to decide its own future. So it's that searching of democracy and democratic approaches that is, I would say, creating new ties and new links between both countries that I am sure will help a lot in the near future to make our countries free.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your contribution, and thank you for the people who sent in questions. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd, a da ni'n mynd drosodd rwan at cyfrannwr o Catalonia. I'm delighted to welcome Jordi to this meeting as well, Jordi Solé, who is also an MEP and from Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya. And Jordi, over to you. And we are fairly short of time, so if we have a brief, if you can manage it, introduction to our members as to circumstances in Catalonia, and we'll see if we can squeeze in a couple of questions as well. Right, diolch yn fawr iawn, Jordi.
Thank you. Hi, well, good afternoon to everyone. Agur, Pernando. Apologies
Hi,
apologies for joining you late. I was in another meeting. First of all, congratulations for your party congress, and also for the roadmap towards independence that you just released, and also for the fact that independence in Wales, support for independence in Wales has reached an all-time record. So well done, and I wish you the best for the coming months. Having said that, if I may also, today we commemorate the 3rd anniversary of October the 1st. What is October the 1st? For the Chinese, it's their national day. For Catalans, it's not our national day, but it's a day for remembrance. We commemorate the independence referendum. We celebrate the act of civic virtue that we Catalans had on that day, and we at the same time condemn the attitude that the Spanish state had on that day, but also before and after that day, towards democracy in Catalonia, towards self-determination, and towards our rights as a people, as a nation. So today is a special day for us, and it also gives me the opportunity to try to summarize very briefly what's the situation 3 years after this crucial event in Catalonia. Well, things, to put it in a nutshell, things are not going well, since we still have political prisoners in Catalan jails, 9 political prisoners, 7 former members of the government, and 2 civil activists, and several others in exile. Things doesn't go well when we have around 3,000 people touched by the repression coming from the Spanish state. Things don't go well when we still have a lot of judicial proceedings that are going to come in the next weeks and months against the pro-independence movement. And also things don't go well when just last Monday this week, the Spanish Supreme Court decided to uphold a previous ruling banning the Catalan president, Mr. Torra, from holding office. Things cannot go well in a state, in a country, when the judiciary decides who can be or who can remain in power as a president of our country. So yes, the situation is, we cannot be much optimistic. Repression has been going on without stop for the last 3 years, but still the Catalan independence movement, and I want to make it very clear, is a strong one. I would say we are stronger than ever, despite of the fact that a lot of people, families are suffering in a direct way the consequences of the repression of the state. We are here, we are alive, and we are in a good shape. And the Spanish state, the Spanish nationalist parties, the deep state will realize that once again when we go to the polls. That will happen probably next February. There will be snap elections because as of now we have an interim government, but we will meet the ballot boxes again, and there we will show again that still the pro-independence movement is a strong movement, that in the parliament we will keep the majority, and especially we will show to the Spanish state and to the rest of the European Union, to the rest of the world, that you cannot try in a democracy to suppress a legitimate, democratic, peaceful movement as it is the pro-independence Catalan movement. So I am pessimistic on the situation that Catalonia, the pro-independence movement, is suffering in terms of repression, but optimistic in the sense that we are still strong, and I think we can come out from the next Catalan elections even stronger. Now, you know that there was a change in the Spanish government last couple of months ago, that we supported the new president, Mr. Sánchez, to become the new president of Spain, and we did it because the Socialist Party, together with Podemos, they are in a coalition for the first time. Spain has a coalition government. They were committed to what we called a dialogue table, a space where the two sides, the two parties, Catalan government and the Spanish government, would do what civilized people in normal democracies are meant to do, which is tackle conflicts over democracy, over self-determination, through dialogue and through negotiations, not through the judiciary, not through the police, not through repression, as has been the choice by the Spanish state so far. So we managed to have a first meeting of this dialogue table, but then pandemics came, and everything has been on hold from a couple of months ago. But I want to insist on the following idea. Today, the Spaniards have the allegedly, at least allegedly, most progressive government that Spain has had in many years, at least in a couple of years. It's a government that is there thanks in part to the votes of a part of the Catalan pro-independence movement. They have a chance to show that they are not the same as Mr. Rajoy, as the right and the far right when it comes to Catalonia. But we don't see them moving. And this is very worrying for us. They are not moving on the way towards dialogue and towards a political solution. So we need to keep insisting. Without dialogue, without this dialogue table, there won't be for much longer a progressive government in Madrid, because we will withdraw our support to them. So it's important that we insist on us and that we count on the international community to put pressure on the Madrid government to solve once and for all the shameful situation of the political prisoners, of the exiles, of all the people suffering repression, and insist on the fact that the only way out is a political and dialogue way out. So this is a kind of call for help also from the outside. And if you agree, I will leave it here for now. And of course, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chdi am hynny. Thank you for that. Our time is very limited, apparently. We've got another 5 minutes, and there are some questions. But can I just make a point to you, and also to both of you, really? My experience of being over in Catalonia and also in the Basque Country a number of times is, and looking at the situation from outside, it's astonishing how political the judiciary are. For a start, even in this country, that would be extraordinary. But it's so explicit as it is in Spain, and also, you know, the opposition and the oppression that there is from Madrid towards people who are nominally Spanish citizens. You are Spanish citizens, and you should enjoy the rights of all Spanish citizens, but somehow you are special. That really does strike people like myself, and I think other foreigners, as being strange and outrageous at the same time. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that, either of you. Jordi first, perhaps.
Okay, first of all, on the judiciary and the judicialization of politics, we have to take into account that in Spain, the judiciary, or at least the highest ranking judiciary, is kidnapped by the right and by the far right. Sometimes I don't know what is the limit, the border between far right and right in Spain. But there is a huge battle within the judiciary and also within politics in Spain to control the judiciary branch. So the theory about separation of powers doesn't work in practice in Spain. Right now, there is a huge battle over the control, the political control of the body from the judges that govern, that manage the judiciary system in Spain. And this has even become an open battle. I mean, at least they should try to keep it, internal and so on. No, it's an open battle. It's a very evident battle. So much for the judicialization of politics. The treatment that we received as distinct national communities, let's put it that way, in Spain. Yes, indeed. When you have consistently in time, persistently in time, a demand for self-determination, for sovereignty, for more powers in the end, for Catalonia or for the Basque country, you cannot treat these people, these supporters to this idea, politically speaking, as an enemy. You cannot do that in a democracy. I mean, we don't share the political project of the Spanish nationalism, but that doesn't make us enemies. I mean, that makes us, of course, adversaries, and we are adversaries very much, and we will fight over many things, but we are not enemies. And sometimes we feel like being treated like an enemy in a violent conflict.
We are very short of time. Can I just ask you a party political question? Someone has posed, I think it's Michael, who's asked, what are the prospects for agreements between the nationalist parties in Catalonia before the election? Possibly, I mean, obviously you have an agreement in the Basque country already, but what about Catalonia? Is there a prospect for an agreement?
Well, this is indeed a big issue and a good question. First of all, 2 out of the 3 main pro-independence parties, 2 of them, Esquerra Republicana and Junts per Catalunya, we are together in the government, in the Catalan government, which is a coalition government. So we have been working together in the government for the last 2.5 years. That means joining forces and trying to put forward a joint political governmental program. I'm saying this because sometimes one might get the idea that we spend all the time, throwing knives and everything amongst ourselves. This is not like this, but it's true that we have different strategies to reach the same goal, which is independence, which is the Republic for Catalonia, and it's normal that when you have so much broad political movement that tries to, catch as many votes as possible from the far left to the right, I would say, it's normal that you have different political parties and different political options. The most important thing for me is that once we have contested the elections, we can again join forces in the government to try to reach our common goal. So sometimes I am aware of the fact that sometimes there are some public statements or some facts that don't help to have the image of the pro-independence movement as a united movement, and we have to improve that. We have to make things better, but still, we are working together, and I think we'll have to see the results in the coming elections. But I think this pro-independence majority in the parliament will keep being there, and we'll have to find a way to keep working together.
Thank you. I'd like to just pose possibly a last question, because we are apparently over time already. Discussing both the Basque Country and Catalonia with some Labour people that I know, I've heard the contention from quite respectable people that it's all about money. Someone's asked this as a question, actually. The reason that you both want to be independent is that you want to get away with the richest parts of the Spanish states and ditch the rest of them. Now, I've always said, that's when you have separation and independence, you have an iterative process of negotiation and you come to an agreement. That's what reasonable people do. But how would you answer that? That's really, it's all about greed and getting away from the rest of Spain. Either of you?
Well, I would say no. It's not a question of money or being wealthy. It's clear that in the case of the Basque Country, we enjoy one of the all the wealthiest situations in the Spanish state. I can accept that, but our goals as regards to that are quite clear. On the one hand, I would say that wealth is not a well shared one, so we yearn to make that wealth available to all the Basque population. We also have popular classes and people that are doing very well at this moment, particularly in the coronavirus crisis. So we as a country also have our needs. And I have to admit, on the other hand, that behind the national aspirations of the Basques, of course, it exists a clear will for a good standard of living that everybody aspires to. I would say, and finally, I would say that to be wealthy or to be well-doing economic part of the world doesn't mean at all that that must be a kind of autarkic country that only looks at its own needs and people. I think that I believe in the concept of internationalism and solidarity, and I think that from a European point of view, that kind of different economic situations have to be clearly compensated from that European view. I would say that being or exercising solidarity, it's a key part of our project, and that of course beyond our needs as a country, we always will be there to support any other country, being or not part of the current Spanish state or any other part of Europe or the world, to share richness and to make possible for everybody that aspiration of living in a decent standard of life.
Thank you. Jordi, do you want to respond to that one?
Yes, well, since we are running out of time, I will say that I fully agree with Fernando. It's not about money, it's about democracy, it's about fundamental rights. It's about the right to have the better tools to improve our society, to have a fairer society, social justice, economic progress, and so on. Though I have to add that the fiscal transfers between Catalonia and Spain are very, very unfair. But this is not the primary reason for our struggle for independence.
Yeah.
I think that, let me say that the thing that Catalans and Basques and Spaniards share is that all these three countries are not poor countries at all. We are rich countries, even economically rich countries, but the point is that richness and wealth is very badly distributed, and not only in Spain, but also in the Basque country. And I will say, Jordi, I think you will agree with me, also in Catalonia. So the point is to highlight, as Jordi said, that when we are asking for national liberties or claims, we are not asking only for free states, but to achieve the main political tool, the stateness, that permits a country to decide its sound policies in economics, in cultural, linguistical, and some other issues. That brings freedom to a country.
Well, on that note, can I say that it's always a matter of the heart and the head, and the stomach as well, of course, for all of us. And at that point, can I just thank you all and thank everyone who has been taking part by listening in on this first virtual meeting. Ga'i ddiolch i chi gyd am ymuno efo ni, a diolch i'n dau siaradwyr o Wlad y Basg ag o Catalunya, i Jordi ag i Pernando. Therefore, can I just send our best wishes to you both from the Plaid Conference and express our solidarity with you, with the people of Catalonia and the Catalan lands as well, and with the Basque people and the Basque people over the border. Our best wishes, and forward for it all towards independence and interdependence, I think, and freedom for us all. Thank you very much indeed for your participation. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd. Na ni.
Thanks so much. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.